In this video, we're going to be going over my AMD trade and why I still think there's much more downside. Let's get right into the video. So there were a few things I saw here on AMD that made me want to go short on it and gave me lots of confidence in holding this trade, even though we kind of consolidated here once I zoom into the daily time frame. Now moving forward, the first thing I saw here, first of all, we had this key level down here at 73.82. You can see all throughout 2021 and 2020, we bounced off this level at 73. And then you had this massive rally of 100% up to 170. And then when you pulled back in June, you bounced right off this level of 73. Another rally. And look what we had here. Each of these moves is forming lower highs. Lower high, lower high, lower high, lower high. On this recent rally, it caught my attention that you formed yet again another lower high right here. And then not to mention you formed a daily supply zone right here at $80. Now, let me turn on the volume profile and you'll also see what I saw here. Now, I talked about the volume profile in a recent video about NVIDIA and how there's a volume void below. And there's a massive volume void here on AMD as well. So once I saw you break this level here, 71.5, it was the 52-week lows. I went short. And I also knew that below was the 200 weekly moving average. You broke below that. And then the next volume shelf here is this 2020 pivot, which is also the pre-COVID highs. And that's the next volume shelf you have here down at $59. And when you have these big volume voids, prices tend to drop or accelerate pretty rapidly through these areas. And there wasn't really any consolidation here. So you can see when we consolidated in areas for a long time, like back in here in the $82 range, the $80 range, it takes a few tries to break below these levels. But when you finally get into these illiquid zones, like after breaking $70, it's pretty much a vortex that takes you down to the next volume shelf. So now I zoomed in a little bit further to the 1 day time frame, the 3-year 1 day. And you'll see we also have these gaps that formed down here around $64 and around $70. And if you guys aren't aware, gaps on the daily time frame tend to get filled at some point or another. It might not happen immediately, but gaps, especially the daily time frame, tend to get filled. So you broke below this level here at $72. You broke below 71.5. You came into 52-week lows, and this level also coincided with a gap that was on the daily time frame. You filled the gap, and then you have another gap down here at $64, or you're yet to fill the gap. The gap fills completely at $62, and along with all that, here's in the volume void. And since breaking below $73 and $71, you've fallen almost 13% on AMD, and which is the reason why I decided to get the $60 puts for November. I went out with November because I mentioned in one of my previous videos, you have to know the equity you're trading. And I know that AMD kind of moves relatively slow. So I wanted to give myself some time on the position and not really have to stress about it. So I didn't expect it to drop, 15% in 1 week, but you just get lucky sometimes and things happen just as you plan. There's been pretty much zero drawdown in this trade. And so far we're up almost 100%. And I plan to roll this position out once this contract goes in the money. And one thing that I like to do, you guys should start doing, is checking out the individual sector your stock or equity is in. So for example, here on AMD is a semiconductor. So AMD is part of SOX. It's the semiconductor index. So along with AMD breaking all these key levels, we also had SOX making new 52s on the year. It also broke the 200 weekly moving average. And the next real area I have on SOX is pre-COVID highs right here at $1,972. I mean, because back after you bounced at the 200 weekly moving average back in March 2020, you really rallied since. You didn't see much consolidation besides this real region right here at 2200. But below 2200, the next real area I'm watching is 1950. So that also coincides with my thesis that AMD and semiconductors have more downside because the semiconductor index is dropping pretty rapidly. And like you saw in AMD, every move buyers are trying to make here, they all form lower highs. Even this most recent rally we had back in July and August, you'll notice that the semiconductor index, SOX, was unable to make a higher high right here and actually formed a lower high. And then you formed another lower high around 2,900. And then you've sold off about, 800 points since. So that also coincides and backs up my thesis that AMD is more downside. And then we'll check out the Nasdaq. So now on the Nasdaq, you'll notice that we tried to make a high around here, 14,000. It looked like you were going to try and make a higher high over this level right here, but you clearly got rejected and sold off since. A little head and shoulders pattern trying to form here. And then you sold back off into this demand zone around 11,000. And you're breaking below this key level at 11,060. And you're also breaking the 200 weekly moving average, which has not been broken since 2008, believe it or not. You can see down here, back in March 2020 lows, you literally wicked off this level perfectly. But now in 2022, you're breaking below this level, a level that has held up since 2008. Now, this also backs up my thesis that I believe there's more downside on AMD and semiconductors, because not only the semiconductor index is falling, AMD's in the volume void, the Nasdaq, the index, the technology index is falling and about to break this demand zone, and not to mention all the macroeconomic events and the geopolitical things going on in the world. But just strictly based on the charts, everything is pointing towards more downside, which is why I believe AMD is going to go in the money and hit $60 probably by the end of next week. By the time you're seeing this video, I believe the stock will continue to make new 52-week lows on the year and come back down into pre-COVID highs around $59. So just my general thought process when I look for it to take a trade, I want to look at how the general index is performing. Then I like to look at how the sector overall is performing, because those two things are going to have a great impact on how an individual equity moves. If a whole sector is selling off, then likely one of the biggest holdings in the sector will likely follow with it. So all those things backing it up, the Nasdaq slicing through demand, and AMD in that volume void, gave me pretty good confidence to take this trade and continue to hold it. Now, if I flip back over to AMD, you'll see that I tried to consolidate here around $68, but there was a clear seller up here at $68.80. Kept on pushing price back down, and this is what we would call a drop-based drop pattern. If you guys have seen the supply and demand videos, pretty essential pattern in supply and demand. So you formed a clear supply and demand pattern. Sellers were accumulating short positions here. They dropped the price lower. Now you're heading straight towards this 2020 pivot at $59, and that was my price target for this trade. Now, those guys helped you with your analysis, or if you've learned anything, just drop a like and comment below, and stay tuned for the next video. Thanks for watching.